But we're not talking about immigration. We're talking about deportation. And they've been clear about that. I mean, they had those signs at the Republican convention, right? Mass deportation. And here we are trying to do it. And I'm just horrified. I mean, what's the way people are being treated, rounded up, gone after. What are we doing? Why? What's the point? I mean, the point is that they don't like having all these dark-skinned people in this country, if we could be honest, I believe. It's not, there's no economic reason. They're not taking jobs from Americans.
Some of the polling numbers that are much worse and more precipitously than drifting are the numbers regarding immigration
Yeah.
and taking a hit on both sides. Across the board, people's regard for immigration and for immigrants has risen, and the deploring of some of the tactics that we see, particularly here on the West Coast in California. We see three or four or five people without badges, without uniforms, covering their faces, going after one person, which just from a efficiency point of view isn't very good. We see people being swept up because of brown skin who turn out to be citizens, who turn out to be legal residents, who turn out to have some status here already. We also see people in the hallways of immigration courts, these ICE officers who are waiting to take into custody people whose status has just been legalized by an immigration court. And I think that that may be perhaps a longer term effect, certainly on Latino voters, as we've seen in the polls, and as Americans begin to see in their own communities the effect of immigration sweeps that take away the woman who runs the little corner bodega, or the guy who has been servicing your car or washing your car for years, or the guy who employs 5 or 6 people in his plumbing business. These are the sorts of things that drip, drip, drip begin to make an effect, I think, on voters, which is why you see the results in the polling.
I mean, I think that that's true. That should be the case. Also, agriculture, hospitality. I mean, there are big industries that depend on an awful lot of immigrants willing to work hard, and uh, and they're obviously they're going to suffer and are suffering already. I mean, I'm horrified by what he's doing in immigration. But we shouldn't even call it immigration. I mean, immigration is there are policy disputes about immigration, what the numbers should be, legal, illegal, how you treat people at the border. That's even complicated. Obviously, Biden got hurt by that, feeling like the border was too porous and all that. But we're not talking about immigration. We're talking about deportation. And they've been clear about that. I mean, they had those signs at the Republican convention, right? Mass deportation. And people didn't quite take it seriously. Some did, of course, I suppose, and liked it. And here we are trying to do it. And I'm just horrified. I mean, what's the way people are being treated, rounded up, gone after. It's usually some American citizens get swept up. But what about the ones who aren't, the people who had temporary protected status, even if they didn't have it? They've been here 15, 20 years, are working hard, they've got families. And what are we doing? Why? What's the point? I mean, the point is that they don't like having all these dark-skinned people in this country, if we could be honest, I believe. It's not, there's no economic reason. They're not taking jobs from Americans. They're not on welfare if they're not they're paying taxes. Their kids seem to be doing well, basically, and assimilating to America. Those fears from 20, 30 years ago that we're going to have like, two Americas, that doesn't has not really worked out. Thank God. We're very good at actually sort of assimilating people. So it's pure, and the cruelty of it, the masked, ICE officers, and now a massive infusion of funds from the reconciliation bill. And God knows who's going to be hired. They're not going to follow strict protocols and guidelines in terms of qualifications and vetting. I'm going to guess they're going to just be get whoever wants to show up and give them incentives to, and they have quotas and they have numbers they want to hit, and so these people. I mean, it's the worst possible way to run. Think about, if you give people numerical quotas, who are they going to go after? They're not going to go after the gang members who would take a lot of work and effort to go find and dig out, and it could be dangerous. Honestly, they're going to go after the most vulnerable people, but you just round them up, and they once came in illegally, 120 years ago, and off they go, and the cruelty of it all. I think I got to say honestly, people should be more appalled. I'm a little upset that people. I think there has been a pretty good negative reaction, justified negative reaction. I argued with a lot of Democrats over the early months of the administration that this was an issue Democrats shouldn't be scared of. I mean, Biden did take a hit on the border, but deportation is different from border control. These people are not. You're in LA, right? The border patrol is going through MacArthur Park. That is not on the border. What are they doing there? And why is ICE going to to 7-Elevens and shopping centers
Because
and so
Stephen
forth.
Miller told them to.
What? Yeah,
Stephen
totally.
Miller told them to
Exactly.
go to Home
But I mean,
Depot
it
and grab
shows
a
how
phone.
much it's about deportation. It's not about keeping the country safe. It's not about protecting us from criminal gangs. It's not about a sort of slightly out of control situation at the border, which maybe we had a bit of in 2023, early 24. It's not about any of those things. So I think people should be more appalled, and I hope they are. And I hope, as you sort of correctly said, that there are particular groups that will be particularly affected by it in terms of the actual economy and housing and agriculture and other things and
But
the
but there,
corner
but
the
there
corner
is.
bodega. But people should also be appalled because it's un-American. I mean, what this is really terrible. What's happening, in my view, on the streets of major cities, and really in LA. And in the LA, why is LA first? LA didn't want this. The citizens of LA didn't want this, primarily mostly. It's
It's a
LA's
blue
first because
city and an immigrant city.
it's a democratic city and a
Yeah.
democratic state, which Trump said basically, right?
But I mean,
So it's really terrible.
when you talk about people speaking up, we have had the protests, the demonstrations. You see videos of a woman down in a very prosperous city down the coast near San Diego who is in a parking lot. I mean, this is a white woman screaming at ICE agents to show their faces as they're taking away a worker. And a federal grand jury in Los Angeles was asked to return charges in 38 indictments against people who had protested or tried to interfere with immigration enforcement actions. And most of those were refused. The grand jury said no to all but 7 of them. I think some of them were thrown out, the charges, and some were reduced. But there is some, I think, a critical mass of resistance among some populations in some places.
Yeah, that's good. And I mean, honestly, I mean, obviously legal resistance and peaceful resistance, but it's very important. No, I've seen it. It's very admirable. I think what a lot of people are doing, and they're doing it for other people whom they don't know personally some often, but they think it's wrong, and it is wrong. And I hope it really comes home. And this is we're 6 months in. They're not letting up. They've got their $1 million goal for the $1 million million person goal for the year. They've got all this money flowing in. So I think we have to really, this is what they're going to be doing. I hope there's a huge reaction against it, honestly, because I think it's just terrible for the country. And uh, so I hope maybe they'll be forced finally at some point to pull back. Stephen Miller's a fanatic on it, I think. And I don't think Trump personally maybe is quite so fanatic. And occasionally he gets phone calls from his buddies and Big Ag or in the hotel business, and he realizes, ooh, this is kind of bad for them. And he sort of says something, maybe we should cool it a little bit. But then this is a case where they've created a Frankenstein, honestly, and unfortunately the Frankenstein's getting a lot more money for the next few months. So I think it's going to get a little worse before it gets better. And it really is terrible for our country and terrible for those
There,
people, obviously. I mean, yeah.
Next week, we have Madeline Brand talking with Jonathan Weissman about American anti-Semitism, being Jewish in the age of Trump, a topic we just touched on briefly here. And after that, Ron Brownstein with Larry Mantle about life during wartime, politics in an age of convulsion. You can get the newsletter, follow everything that we are doing here. I'm Pat Morris, and I thank you so much for joining us this evening.